He's not here. Wait a minute. It's Christmas Eve. It's Christmas Eve. And I'm alone. I'm home alone. In our workshop. By myself. Ah! Never fear. I'll find some way to occupy my time this weekend. Get this one on the lift because this is the 1970 Dodge Charger SE converted to an RT.
Oh, I might have to move it. Nope, just enough.
And this being holiday season, that car looked pretty good out there on the snow and ice, just like Santa's sleigh. Thank goodness that's the only snow and ice it's going to see all season. About 30 feet of it. We still got
They do look pretty out in the snow, although I can't enjoy the look of them out in the snow because I'm so paranoid about rust.
But just imagine how beautiful it was seeing these cars tooling around with their 440 engines and two-wheel drive going sideways on Michigan roads here in Detroit. What a time that must have been.
Yeah.
But that's also why so many of these cars didn't make it.
Yeah. B-bodies are big rusters. What else are we doing? We're gonna pull in the hearse and the Olds. The hearse is next, I think, isn't it?
It is.
All right.
She's running.
I'm gonna pull that in then.
We're playing musical cars again. So we'll get the cars jockeyed around and then we'll get started on this 1970 Dodge Charger SE with a Magnum 440 V8. I have been waiting to dig into this car for weeks, ever since it arrived, right just before the Christmas holiday began. I'm looking forward to learning all there is to know about it and seeing what work Eric can accomplish. How's it look under here, Eric?
Well, customers' main complaints on this car are that it leaks trans fluid from the trans pan and oil from the oil pan gasket. Someone's definitely been in here before. That's not the factory gasket. It looks over-torqued to me. You know, like they tightened it too much and deformed the pan a little bit. So I'll take the pan off, I'll check it like I always do and make sure that it's flat and that these, you know, the spots where the bolts go in aren't dimpled. And I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but there are drips of trans fluid hanging off here, and it drives like it's very low on trans fluid. You put it in gear and it takes a long time to get moving.
My Dodge St. Regis is like that when it gets
low. Yep.
I think all these 727 torque flights get that way when they're low.
Yeah.
Which would explain it.
His inspection cover is missing. He gave us a spare inspection cover to put on. I'm kind of happy that he's got, you know, this custom exhaust setup. The service manual says that to get the oil pan off to replace that gasket, you got to drop the exhaust and the center link. Of course, that might have only been for cars without dual exhaust, because I think this is really a pretty factory routing. If it had single exhaust, I think you've got a crossover here that then goes to the back, so you would have to drop it. And then the service information also says with the big blocks, once you drop this and unbolt the pan, you might have to actually turn the engine over by hand to get some of the counterweights in the crankshaft in the front to clear the pan. So we definitely don't have a lot of space to work with. And then he wanted us to paint the pan too while it's off, because, you know, as you can see, the oil leaks are holding the paint chips onto the pan. I can actually move the chips around. We're also putting new brake pads on it. He gave us some pads over that he wants on it. And he said something about a dent in the drive shaft somewhere. So I'm gonna pull this out. I don't see any here, but I mean, it could of course be up top. And I'm gonna take the drive shaft out and take it to a specialist and have them do their magic.
Are they gonna rebalance it, you think?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll at least do that. If it's got a dent in it, you know, I don't know if they can fix that or not.
Are you gonna have to remove the exhaust for that anyway?
No, I'll unbolt it from here, pull it down, and then it's just gonna slide out of the trans.
Gotcha.
It's clean and solid under here. I mean,
Always.
it's not 100% rust free, but it's very, very nice. There's no scaly rust, just a little bit of surface rust here and there mostly, which is good. I have loved and saved much rustier cars than this.
And this car is a driver. This is not a trailer queen, so a little surface rust is okay, and I'm sure our customer, he gets plenty of enjoyment and use out of this car during the season. In all kinds of weather. It's definitely a wonderfully restored car, but obviously not overly restored.
Oh wow. Actually, there's a tear in the gasket here from it being over torqued. Right there.
Sure enough. Well, that looks like a good place to start.
Yep, and the gasket we're gonna put on this, I love these gaskets. Very tough, heavy-duty gasket that we keep in stock for 727s because we're working so many of them. It's got its own like skeleton to it. So as long as the pan is in good shape and the surface is nice and clean, it'll go on there and it's gonna seal pretty darn well.
That's a good heavy-duty unit going on a good heavy-duty transmission. And what a transmission and what a car. The legendary 1970 Dodge Charger SE with a 440 Magnum. I'll let you get started, Eric. I'm sure we got a very busy day. It's already been a crazy day.
Oh my gosh.
Getting all these cars shifted around and having that unexpected dilemma with a Thunderbird's front wheel locking up on us.
We've got solid ice right out the door there, and we try not to salt it because we have to drive old cars in and out of here.
Which is our choice, and every once in a while it can bite us.
Well, we had to move that Thunderbird, and the left front wheel, the brake locked up, and so it locked up out on the ice out there, and the car did not want to move. You know, it just couldn't get the traction to pull itself, so we had a heck of a day. That car is not a back burner project, but this one's got to be done first, and the work that this one requires is going to be quicker and easier.
And no fudging.
No.
We're doing this car by the book, because that's what the owner expects. And he asked us to...
Do I ever do anything not by the book?
Not that I'm aware of.
Sometimes on my own cars, because I know what I can get away with, and if it doesn't work, I got nobody to blame but myself.
And when you work on my cars behind you, we can experiment.
Yeah.
But we don't experiment on customers' cars.
No. Nope, they don't like that.
That's just bad form. So instead, you're going to be doing this car the right way the first time and fix whatever else is going on, because our customer signaled to us that he was not satisfied with the service that he received from another shop that he's been relying on for 10 years. But obviously the market has changed, the experts have come and gone, and the people doing the work he said he wasn't satisfied with, so he's given us a shot. Because he's not a Mopar collector, he tells me, he's actually a Ford collector. Has an amazing collection of Mustangs, but he said he had to have one Mopar in his collection. If it was going to be one, it had to be the ultimate, the B-body, the Dodge Charger, 6970 with a 440 in it.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Chargers. My dad had a 74 when I was a real little kid. So, that's kind of what I grew up with. I grew up liking Richard Petty, and he was famous for driving Chargers, so.
And we both grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
The immortal General Lee, the 1968 through 70 Chargers used in that television program. So I'm so happy to have this car here. I can't wait to see you work on it, and can't wait to see what we can learn getting inside the guts of this 1970 Dodge Charger. So I'll let you get started, Eric. Good luck.
Alrighty.
And we'll catch up with you once you're making some progress.
I'm gonna have to pry. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to pry a little bit.
So the drive shaft's coming out first?
Yep. Try to get that over to a specialist, most likely Tuesday. I don't see it happening before then. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. If DTS is open until 5 or 6, I get out of my other job at 4, I might be able to get over there. Oh, it didn't leak this time. Of course, we think that it's low anyway. Where's the dent? I don't see any dents. Although it also doesn't look like a drive shaft that's been on a car for 50 years either, does it? I wonder if it's custom built for this car for some reason. And I don't see any weights on it. It doesn't really look like it's been balanced. So maybe someone made it and they didn't balance it, or maybe they balanced it and the weight fell off, I don't know. But that doesn't look to me like an original drive shaft, unless it's, I don't know, new old stock or something. I think this was custom made for this car. And it doesn't look like it was balanced. I mean, can you see anything on this drive shaft? No, you can't see that at all. But there should be little square weights welded to it to balance it. So, and maybe it didn't, I don't know, maybe they felt it didn't need it because it was okay at the time or something. But the specialist will know. One more thing I'm gonna do before I forget. These caps, of course, come off. They can fall off, so do this to keep them on. All right. Now pull the trans pan tonight and have a look at that. I think I'm gonna need a bigger catch pan for that.
Well, I'm sure the customer will be happy to hear we're off to a good start.
And the other thing I can do today, maybe if we got time, is I can put the pads on. We still gotta figure out if these are left-hand thread lug nuts on this side. Doesn't look like it. Left-hand thread lugs usually have special markings on them, little hash marks or something, and these don't seem to have it, so these are probably good old righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. But from the factory, this is a new car. I'm sure this car would have had left-hand thread lug nuts on the driver's side.
How tight do those pan bolts feel?
I don't know, they don't feel crazy, I guess. But you know, the other thing is, the last person to put this on may not have been the one that over-torqued it. This transmission has had some work done on it. I can tell it's got a new gasket here between the tail shaft and the rest of the body of the trans. So someone's done some work on this. They've, most likely, it's been apart and been rebuilt once.
Well, the customer did ask while you're looking at the transmission to see if you can find the VIN code on it and see if it matches
Oh, that's right, he did say
the
that.
VIN code on the block.
I don't remember off the top of my head where they stamped that on these 727s. I think it's over in this area. It's got a low car shift.
Shift kit on it?
Yeah, well, not a kit, the cable
Oh.
kick down goes up to the carburetor. It wouldn't have left the factory with that. But that's the easiest way, you know, with one of these torque flights. If you don't have the original linkage, is to use that cable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the aftermarket way of doing what Chrysler would have done with linkage. I'm gonna have to check the service manual. Oh, wait a minute. There's some numbers there. The gasket is wrapped around so much of the trans, I can't make out all the numbers, so I'm gonna have to take the pan and the gasket off first and have a look, but I think that's the numbers we're looking for. Now, did the customer say why he wanted us to double check that? Does he think this transmission is original to the car?
The engine and transmission that were put in this car were from a donor, and I believe he said it was a 1970 Chrysler Newport.
Okay. So he just wants to make sure that the VIN on the trans matches the VIN on the engine?
Yes.
Because we know this isn't the original engine.
Correct, but he wants to know, did the Newport have a different transmission in it when he pulled it?
Oh, okay.
He just wants to know, is the engine and transmission a matching 440-727 combo from its original car?
Okay. Well, I know that the bell housing is different between a small block and a big block 727. So even if it's not the original transmission to the engine, I'm quite sure it's a big block, you know, 727. It wouldn't work any other way. One of these days we're gonna get a caddy.
And just to clarify, we've had plenty of Cadillacs, but when you say caddy, you're talking about a
Oil caddy.
oil caddy. It's on the to-do list.
That's the thing about a shop, there's always at least one more piece of equipment you need. Always. We could be a full restoration facility and there'd be something else we'd like to have.
Something to make the job easier. Well, how's it look, Eric?
Really, really bad. So, I mean, you can see that this was way over torqued. There's very severe damage around each one of the bolt holes here. So no wonder this thing was leaking. This is a pretty heavy duty gasket. I've used these before. I don't like them as much as what I'm gonna put on, but this is supposed to be a very heavy duty gasket, and even still, it's way over torqued. And then we look at the pan. Every bolt hole, I don't know how well that's showing up on camera, but they're all really stretched. So I'll try to straighten these out, but you know, if this was my car, this is the worst I've ever seen. I would almost prefer maybe just getting another pan, because this is really bad.
Well, fortunately, this is a 1970 B-body, restoration parts.
Yeah, I'll check some of the catalogs and see what we can get. You know, 727s aren't exactly rare. I might even poke around on eBay, look through some of the local pickup parts, and see if any of them have maybe a, you know, Dodge Ram pickup with a 727 in it or something. Although, you know, you never know what you're gonna get at pickup parts. Sometimes they take a claw hammer to drain these and just whack it, and then, you know, it wouldn't do me any good anyway. So, but I'll explore some options, and maybe I can fix this one. This is just like literally the worst I've ever seen. This is really, someone tightened the heck out of these. I'm surprised, honestly, I'm surprised they didn't strip out the threads in the trans. We had a customer's Plymouth police car, a station wagon in here a few months ago, where the threads were actually damaged in the trans here for some of the pan bolts. And I had to helicoil a few of them. It's not, you can't put 100 foot-pounds on these, for Pete's sake. These don't look like they've been helicoiled, and none of them were cross-threaded. I guess it's okay, but holy cow.
Yeah, the bolts didn't fight you coming out.
Nope.
But boy, somebody really drove them in there, didn't they?
Yeah, and who knows, maybe the last guy to do this wasn't the guy that over-tightened it. I could definitely see a scenario where, you know, someone put a cork gasket on this, tightened the heck out of it and ruined it then, and then somebody else put that heavy-duty gasket on here to try to fix this problem, and it just wasn't enough. We gotta get this flat again, or no gasket is gonna ever seal here.
Gotta have a good flat mating surface for any of those materials to work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our customer, the owner, was definitely barking up the right tree when he said, I think something happened to my transmission oil pan. If you guys would take it off and look at it and see what you can do about it.
Oh yeah, we know what happened now. Like I've said a million times before, there are some people out there who shouldn't be working on cars. No, this isn't gonna do it. Nope.
Looks like that front sway bar is coming out there, Eric.
That's actually not a sway bar, that's a center link.
Correction, looks like that front center link is coming out, Eric.
It's not coming all the way out, I just gotta drop it out of the way to get the oil pan out. Yeah, this is the center link, and here's a sway bar up in the front. You know, trying not to use things like pickle forks. I don't want to break the dust boots. You can get them. I'd just rather not. And I think a pickle fork is kind of hard on the joint itself too, because you're putting loads on it that it really wasn't designed for. Now, if you're just ripping it apart to replace those parts, then yeah, nobody cares. Go ahead and use a pickle fork. But, you know, these parts are good. They're not worn out. They don't have any play in them. I don't want to replace them if I don't have to. I don't know how old these parts are. They don't really look original to me. I think they've been replaced already. But, I mean, if they're 20, 25-year-old parts, even if they're aftermarket, they're better quality than the stuff you can get now. So I'd rather save them, you know? One of my biggest pet peeves is a lot of people think that everything that's new is automatically better. No, in car parts, that hasn't been true for 20 years. All the aftermarket stuff, you know, well, not all of it, but a lot of it is made overseas and it's junk. And I would rather trust old parts. If they're still good and they don't have any play in them, I'd much rather have the old stuff on there than anything new. So that's why I'm trying to save this if I can.
Moral of the story is, if you can save it now, do it now.
Yeah.
And how come the oil pan's coming out?
Oh, he wants it repainted. He also said something, I think, about it leaking, but I don't see any leaks. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's covered in oil. It's leaking from somewhere, but I don't... Even the crankshaft seal seems fine. I don't know where it's... you know what? There is a lot of goo here. It looks like someone slathered some RTV on the front of it to try to get it to stop leaking. You know, the paint is just coming off the pan and he wants it repainted. So I'll take it down and, you know, repaint it, put a new gasket on it. I'll put some primer on it, so hopefully it sticks a little bit better this time. But yeah, that's the big thing.
Is this how it would have looked from the factory? Or is it going to be better than factory when you're done with it?
It's probably going to be better. You know, if you've ever seen just about any car engine from this era when they painted it, you know, they did not do a good job. Just a quick psh, 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 and it's done. So, I mean, there's places they missed. There's places they put way too much on, and there's runs. So it's probably going to be better. I can't fake as bad of a job as they did originally.
These cars are so prized and so cherished, and they were put together slapdash by people that just needed to get them out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little funny.
Because these were just cars when they were new. And they were built by, or you know, put together as cars were during that time period. And there wasn't a lot of care or emotion in what would eventually become a solid collector's item a couple generations later.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a nerd and I like the numbers matching, date code, correct stickers, correct markings and all that stuff. But the truth is, you can take that too far. I've heard of stories, you know, about people on the assembly lines back in the 60s and 70s where, you know, a guy would literally mark different chalk marks on the bulkhead of the car depending on where he wanted to go for lunch. And he was literally just sending a message to the guys further down the line. Hey, you want to go to Stanley's for lunch? And that's all that marking meant. The manufacturer didn't have, it wasn't a manufacturer mark, so you can take that stuff too far. I think it's cool, I really do, but to some extent, some of it means nothing.
Right. And it was a product of the time. Mm-hmm. So, well, I'll let you get back to it, and once that center link, because that's how I learn what these parts are really called. It's always from you correcting me in my incompetence. But as soon as that center link is removed and you get the oil pan off, we'll pick that up again. Trickle, trickle of engine oil.
Yeah, all of a sudden I feel like I gotta pee. I had to use a pickle fork, it just wasn't giving me any option. You know, when this was all together, there wasn't any room to get anything I have with jaws to get in here and grab this and push on that stud while it pulled down on the link. So I hate doing that. To me, pickle forks are tools you use when you're not trying to put things back together and you're just getting new parts, but sometimes it just doesn't give you any option.
Oh, but there it is. The center link is down out of the way, so now I'm guessing that oil pan that you're draining can now come down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna unbolt the pan. Some of the stuff up here is gonna be a little tricky to get to. The service manual says I might have to turn the engine over. The counterweights on the crankshaft might get in the way here to get the oil pan out, so we'll see. I don't have a lot of room to do that either, but that's the next step. Got it off.
I see that, but holy cow, you said they really laid it on thick, didn't
Yeah, they put a little bit too much RTV on here, I guess. And removal was complicated a bit by the windage tray, which is also glued on pretty good. But yeah, now you can see a little bit better what we're dealing with the paint. You know, I can just push chips of paint around because I mean the oil is what's holding them on. It's not paint adhesion. It's just the fact that it's covered in oil is holding those chips of paint on. So I have to really clean the heck out of this and get some new gasket. These are a little bit stretched too. Not all of them, but that one is. You know, just like the trans pan, which is over here, which we talked about earlier. That's so stretched I don't think I can fix it. I actually already ordered another pan for it. This one so far doesn't look as bad. It does have a little bit of that over torque damage too, just like the trans.
But I see you use the transmission jack there for a little bit just to help rearrange or reposition the undercarriage.
Oh, I just had to lift the, I unbolted the two big bolts that hold the engine to the motor mounts, and I lifted the engine just a smidge, just to give myself a teeny little bit of clearance. And then I dropped it back down on its mounts because I just don't like supporting the engine that way. I just needed it that way for a few moments. I'll have to knock some of these stretched bolt holes down a little bit. Ooh, that one's really bad. That's not quite as bad as the trans pan, but that ain't good. And I'll have to get a gasket coming and get this really clean.
I believe the owner said that's a newer pan. That's a deep well that they put on because it wouldn't have come on a 318 car.
Oh yeah, well, a 318 pan's not gonna fit on a 440 anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a newer pan. I mean, there's no rust on it at all, not even slightly. You know, when a pan's been on a car for 50 plus years, you almost always see some rust or some dents or something. And this would be a virgin pan if somebody hadn't over-torqued a few bolts. So I'm making a mess all over the floor, which even though Ross is filming right now, I'm sure he is grinding his teeth.
Dying inside.
Yeah, I know you are. You start cleaning messes up before I'm finished making them. Yeah, I'll start cleaning this up and see what I can do with it.
All right, we'll pick this up then.
So we got an interesting little thing here. So a lot of cars from the 60s and older did have reverse thread lug nuts on the driver's side. And Chrysler, I think, kept them the longest, up until I think the 72 model years. This car did not have reverse thread on the left front because apparently the brake rotors have been replaced at some point. That was righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, just like everything else in the world. But apparently the studs have never been replaced in the rear axle. I didn't think these were reverse thread lug nuts, but I knew it was a possibility. So I started taking them off, turning them to the left, and they weren't moving. And I was like, I wonder if they just haven't been replaced. So then I turned my gun to turn it to the right, and they came off. Most of the time, in my experience, lug nuts that are left-hand thread have like these hash marks on the sides of them. These ones don't. They've got little L's on them, which I don't think I would have ever seen, at least not easily, you know, inside the recess of this cap. But there they are. So yeah, when I put this back together, I gotta make sure those lug nuts go here, and all the other lug nuts for the rest of the car can go anywhere else. Because everything else on this car, I'm sure, is gonna be righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And the studs got little L's on them too. If you can see that.
Thank you for the top tip, Eric. More good stuff.
So just a little thing I want to do real quick because it can be a huge safety issue, and we've got a car here where I can show it to you. So the center caps on the wheels on this Charger bolt on from the back side. Now I noticed when I was bolting this one on that one bolt isn't like the others. You know, the two that match probably came with the center cap. I think this is an aftermarket reproduction center cap. And I noticed that one was different. Believe it or not, that can be a safety issue. You see how the bolt circle, where the actual lug nuts are, is recessed in from this surface and this surface? Well, when you put a bolt in there, you've got to make sure that the top of that bolt is below this surface. If it sticks up, then when you bolt it to the car, the wheel's not going to sit flush on the hub, and it will loosen up big time and fall off the car, probably very quickly. So I wanted to check this. As soon as I noticed that one of these bolts doesn't match, I wanted to make sure it at least sits below that surface. So I got a straight edge here, which happens to be a ballast resistor for a Chrysler. That's the first straight flat thing I could find. You can tell this is kind of a Chrysler place. And I just bridged these two surfaces here and went over the top of the bolt, and it doesn't scrape. They all, nope, it's just there's a little burr right there I'm getting caught on, but yeah, so they're all below that surface, so that's good. I'm just bringing that up. If you're using, you know, the bolts that came with the center cap, it's probably fine, but I can imagine a scenario where someone loses a bolt and they go to their bolt bin and they throw one on, especially if they're gonna use a lock washer or something, and then it sticks up and then the wheel doesn't sit flush, which, you know, best case scenario, then the wheel will be wobbling like that and you'll get a vibration. Worst case scenario, it could fall off the car. So just something you want to keep in mind if you ever deal with something like this. The heads of them bolts have got to be below flush with the mounting surface on the wheel.
How's the Charger coming, Eric?
Almost done.
I know you've been pretty busy the last couple of days with it.
Yeah, a little bit frustrating. Earlier in the week, I thought I had everything all ready to go. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get the oil pan on, the trans pan on, the drive shaft in, brake pads on, everything. Well, the brake pads ended up being wrong. The trans pan I ordered didn't come in. Turns out the place I ordered it from refunded my money because they didn't have it in stock. What else? Oh, they couldn't balance the original drive shaft because it's dented.
Which is right over here.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of stuff that I was kind of counting on happening didn't happen. Let's see, where's that dent? It's near the front here, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Blue tape.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how well you can even see that on camera, but there's a dent right there. And they said that they were not comfortable balancing it because of the dent. So, and they also, as soon as I plopped the drive shaft down on the counter, the guy at the counter looked at it and he said, that drive shaft looks too short. I was like, how can you tell just by looking at it? And he said, well, I can see where the seal is rubbing on it and it just looks too short. Well, the guy must have a pretty darn good eye, because I measured for the new drive shaft the way he taught me to, and they built a new one, and the new one is literally like a 1/4 inch longer than this one. So it's not much. But the owner of this car told us when he dropped the car off that when he had this drive shaft installed, the place that installed it told him that they thought it was too short.
Yes, they did.
So we got two different separate places saying the same thing. I think he said the place that installed that drive shaft was Ring and Pinion on Grospec.
Right.
And I had the new drive shaft made at DTS, which is also on Grospec, but they're a few miles farther south.
And we're just off Grospec.
Yeah, so...
We're all on the same line here.
Yeah. So let's see. Let me lift the car a bit. So I painted the oil pan, you know, Chrysler Hemi engine orange, and I put it on. I put the torque converter inspection cover on. He provided this to us. It wasn't on here when the car came, so I bolted it on. And then this is the new trans pan. The one I ordered originally that they didn't have was supposed to be like an OE replacement. This one is actually a deep pan. So this one takes more fluid than the factory pan, which, you know, the car doesn't necessarily need that, but it's not a bad thing. It certainly did take a lot of fluid. It took like an extra 5 quarts or something. I kept putting fluid in, and I was like, oh my gosh. But this is cool. It's got a drain now, so that's neat. And it was just bare naked steel. I covered it with some Eastwood patina preserver to try to stop it from rusting as fast as, you know, just bare steel would. And then here's the beautiful new drive shaft, complete with balancing weights, which the old drive shaft didn't have.
It is a work of art.
Yeah, it's almost too pretty to put on there, isn't it? And he told me that there's a coating on here, so this won't rust super fast either, although I think he said it would only last maybe a year. He gave me a cheat sheet on how to measure it. I can show you real quick. Now, if you do this, you have to have the weight of the car on the rear axle, so you can't accurately measure it hanging like this right now. But they had me measure from the seal on the back of the trans across to the yoke here that the U-joint bolts to with the cap off. So when you take one of these caps off, the flat part that's left there where the cap would bolt to, that's where you measure to. And then of course, like I said, you gotta have the weight of the car on the rear axle, because, you know, the axle is gonna move up when the weight's on it, and they want that measurement. Also, you can't do it that way if you've got like a midship bearing, like a 2-piece drive shaft. There's a different way. And I don't remember off the top of my head what that way is. That was in the cheat sheet he gave me, but I didn't need to know it, so I didn't look at it.
Well, it looks great. I really hope this is going to improve the drivability of this car.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'd like to take it for a drive and make sure it doesn't vibrate, but there's also no weights on the wheels. And we talked to the customer and we told him we were going to balance the wheels too, so we could drive it and make sure that all the vibrations are gone. And he said, no, you don't have to do that. I got new tires going on it. So, you know, okay. I mean, I might be able to tell the difference anyway if I drove it between a drive shaft vibration and wheel and tire vibration, because of course the drive shaft spins about 3 times faster than the wheels do. So it does give you a different vibration.
At least the frequency of the vibration will be
exactly
noticeable.
You tend to feel it it's a faster feeling vibration, like you said, higher frequency, and you tend to start to feel it at a lower speed. It would be nice to get rid of all the known vibrations before I take it for a test drive like that. But they did balance it, so honestly, I'm feeling pretty good about it. And the place we took it to, right now, they still have a good reputation. The thing I'm always a little bit worried about is, even with the places we deal with that do have good reputations, you still got to keep an eye on them. You know, these days, there's so many people retiring and moving out of the business, and the kids are getting into the business, and sometimes they don't care as much, or they just don't have as much experience or whatever. So even the places that have a good reputation, which are the places we try to do business with, sometimes they change. And so just because someone still has a good reputation doesn't mean that they will continue to do a good job, you know, 2-3 3-5 years from now. So even though I like everyone we're doing business with so far, I try to keep an eye on everybody.
You got to keep your finger on the pulse of this industry about what's going on and
Yep.
who the best in the business are that provide us with these support services.
Yep.
Like driveline services. And how the brake pads fare?
Oh, not too bad, I guess. The ones he gave us, unfortunately, are the wrong ones. Now, they're the right ones for 1970 Dodge Charger with disc brakes from the factory, but this car, I think, has had a conversion done on it because they don't fit these calipers. Matter of fact, these calipers are more like for my 84 Plymouth Grand Fury, an M-body, and that's actually what I ordered. To get the right pads for this car, I ordered pads for an 80s M-body, and they fit.
Well, that's all great news, Eric. So what's left?
Bolt the wheels on.
She got fresh oil?
Yes.
Transmission fluid?
Yep. New oil, new trans fluid. I'd like to take the car for a test drive and get the trans fluid warm to make sure that it's at the right level. Because, I just had it, basically, I started it up and I put it in neutral and I filled it until I started getting fluid on the dipstick. Then I actually put it in drive and I had a brake pedal depressor on it to try to get the fluid warm, but that still doesn't get it as warm as you do when you drive it. It's in the ballpark. I tried to keep it a little on the low side so I wouldn't overfill it, but really we need to drive this car and make sure we get it right that way. And then the other thing is the customer was complaining that this turn signal was slow when he would flick it. And I took it apart, I took it off the car, and I found out inside here the ground pin was broken off. So I soldered it back on. I put some heat shrink on there to try to hold it in place. We'll see how well that works. I'm gonna, this is a case grounded light, so I'm gonna sand a couple spots to make sure we get a good electrical connection, put it back on the car and test it, and hopefully this works too.
All great news.
Yeah.
And we'll see just how soon we can get this 1970 Dodge Charger 500 SE with an RT 440 Magnum back on the road again. How's the Charger looking, Eric?
Pretty good actually. I got it almost finished up last night. The thing that makes me feel the best is when the customer dropped this car off. He had one little complaint about it that he almost didn't mention, but the way he mentioned it, I knew it was important to him. So he said that when the headlights are on and you get the right turn signal, it's slow. And he said it drove him crazy, but he wasn't really asking us to fix it. In my experience, those are the things that the customers are happiest to have fixed, and I fixed it. So I'm really happy about that. It was kind of stupid. This housing here, the light bulb socket is crimped into the housing and it's case grounded. So there's no ground wires. It's just grounded because the ground for the light bulb touches the socket, which touches the housing, which touches the car, which is the ground. Little bit of real simple testing. Basically all I did was I disconnected it. I stuck because I suspected it was a ground. I stuck my test light in the circuit in the 2-pin connector that supplies the flash for the headlights, and then I grounded it to the light bulb socket. And my test light was real slow and real dim, just like on the car. So I knew the problem was the ground. Really, it didn't look too bad. A lot of times when you see that, the housings are real rusty and stuff, and this wasn't rusty, and as a matter of fact, it really didn't even feel loose. Sometimes you can even grab it and twist it in there, and I couldn't do that. So I literally just cleaned it with a wire brush and put a blob of solder on there, and it fixed it. But if it happens again, the best way to fix it would be to replace the housing.
Well, that's great news. Let's see how it works.
Yeah, I think as long as he doesn't drive it in the salt or anything, it's probably gonna be okay. And a housing, I'm sure, I don't know what a housing costs for this. I'm sure they're reproduced. I'll bet you it's $200 or something. So we'll try this first, maybe save him $200. If it happens again, we'll replace it. But yeah, let's take it for a drive and see how it does. sold in gear. Now honestly, this car drove pretty well, as far as I know, when he dropped it off. So this test drive is more to get the transmission fluid hot than anything else. And to check and see if it's still leaking, because I did replace the trans pan gasket and the oil pan, oil pan gasket. Thank God we got a dry day. Today is late January in Michigan, and so, you know, we'll take the dry days when we can get them. We also had like 3 straight days of rain, so all the salt is off the roads too.
That's a huge benefit for us.
Yep. And we're not the only ones. When I was coming back from brunch, I saw someone driving down the road in a really nice 58 Thunderbird. So I don't know if he was on a test drive after doing some repairs too. I assume so. I don't know why you would go joyriding on a day like today. Maybe he was. There are people that do that, figuring that it might be their last chance until April.
Well, this Charger has a very nice ride.
Yeah. I love that Eldorado, but I think this car might be almost as soft. It's very comparable. That Eldorado, I loved it, but it was stiffer than I thought it would be for a late 70s Cadillac. This one's a bit softer than I thought it would be for a 70 Charger.
You always equate the Chargers as a race car. You forget they're actually a mid-level luxury car.
Yep, that's really what they were intended as. You wanted a muscle car from Dodge, you got a Coronet or a Challenger, really. I've always had a soft spot for Chargers. My dad had a 74 when I was very, very young. My earliest memories of cars were my dad's 74 Charger SE, which was black on the outside. It had the 3 louver windows in the quarter, and I think the interior was blue vinyl. And then my mom, at the same time, had an orange or red 78 Volare 4-door, which had the California emissions package on it, which meant it was a 318 4-barrel. How that car ended up in Michigan, I don't know, but that's what it was.
Now, our customer did complain because you talked about replacing the front brake pads that they squealed before.
Oh yeah, that's right. I gotta check to make sure the brakes aren't squeaking now. I don't hear them. I put a spray on the brake rotors too. That's called D-Sweep. You know, in a perfect world, when you replace pads, you should either replace the rotors or cut the rotors, because the lining material from the pads will embed itself into the metal of the rotor. And sometimes, if you're changing pads, you go from like a Wagner to a Bendix or something like that. The chemicals in the new pads and the lining material that's embedded in the rotor don't always get along, and that can cause squeaks. And that's why you really should either replace or cut the rotors.
Let's take a little buzz down M59, shall we?
Okay.
See what this car is like in the real world, not just in our little enclosed industrial park. So with that brand new drive shaft that you installed, how does it feel?
It seems okay, but I only got it up to 40 or 45. Traffic's not being super cooperative. Lots of people out today and not in a particular hurry. But it feels okay. And I think I probably would feel an out of balance drive shaft at 40, 45. I don't feel anything, so I think that's okay. Almost 55 according to the gauge, which is probably about right. That's about as fast as most people drive on M59. At the right time of day, traffic will be doing 60, 65 here. That's pushing it a bit. And the sheriffs do patrol this a lot.
This
so
is
I
a heavy
try.
enforcement zone, it is.
Yep.
This is the big artery thoroughfare of Macomb County. So, always good to play it safe when you're out here on our big state highway.
Go just a little bit further because traffic's cooperating. M59 is actually surprisingly dry here, and like I said, we do need to get the trans fluid warm so I can check it properly. It seems to be doing okay.
How are the gauges?
Seem to be working except for coolant temperature, which is probably why he's got extra ones down here. But fuel seems to work, oil pressure is working, and an alternator is working. All those gauges moved when we started the car, except temperature. I didn't notice if that moved or not. Didn't hear the brakes squeak.
Not at all. Those brakes are effective and very quiet. With that 440 Magnum V8, you've got ample supply of power on your foot.
Yeah, I haven't come anywhere near flooring it.
No.
I'm one of the most unlucky people I know. If I pushed it hard, I only try to push cars kind of hard when I think I need to. Other than that, I'm afraid I'm going to break it.
So any other thoughts in terms of drivability of this 70 Charger 500 SE?
It runs really well.
Yes, whoever, I think we commented before earlier in the video, whoever did the engine work and the swap, because this is originally a 318 car, whoever put this 440 Magnum in did a phenomenal job in making a good, reliable, making good power delivery. It starts right up every time you turn the key, warms right up, maintains a good, smooth idle. I think there's a lot to be said for the team that the owner of this car put together to really give it the performance that he was looking for.
Yeah, I wonder who did the engine. And it doesn't feel to me like it's got a real lumpy cam or anything like that, which I don't like lumpy cams anyway. I think, you know, people go for them because it does give you more power, but in general, I think people would actually be happier if they're actually driving the car with something a little bit more mild. And so, you know, I like what they did there. We know that this car's got a high flow oil pump in it, which doesn't give me a warm fuzzy feeling. I've heard no problems with those that do not. But as long as you don't run it hard, I think it's probably okay. But I'm not a fan of hot rods anyway. I did a little bit of hot rodding when I was younger, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. It made, in my experience, it makes the car noisy, less comfortable, less reliable, and I just want to have something decent, comfortable, and reliable. So,
And you've got all of those things with this Dodge Charger. This would be a very nice car to take a road trip in.
you know, I'm not saying I wouldn't want a car with a 440 or a Hemi. I would. I'd just keep it pretty much stock. That's all.
Ample oil pressure.
Yeah, water temperature ain't really coming up though yet.
No, it's not. Maybe something wrong with the sender.
I think it's off the peg. I think it's starting to move. I guess we'll go a few more miles.
Well, how's it feel?
Feels nice. It's got plenty of power. I do smell something burning. Maybe a little bit of the paint I put on. It's not bad. Coolant temperature still isn't coming up, so I guess I'll drive it a little bit more. If it doesn't come up still, I'll pull it in and check the trans fluid anyway. But I'll put a few more miles on it, and we'll see what happens.
All right, we'll see when you get back.
All right.
Have fun.
Yep. Well, that's pretty much a wrap. We fixed everything that he brought it here for.
All 7 items on the list. Complete. And it runs great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Drives good.
So yeah, I think he'll be happy, and we need the room to move on to the next big thing,
Absolutely we
which
do.
you'll find out what that is.
We won't keep everyone in suspense for too long, but we'll be doing another episode of our series here at Chase Classic Motors very shortly. You'll all see what we have in store. Something pretty special is about to happen here in a couple of weeks, and we can't wait to share it with you. And yes, it will be Mopar related, as we say good night and good luck to this 1970 Dodge Charger 500 SE with the RT package, just for kicks.
Yeah, well, bolt-on RT package. It didn't, in all fairness, it didn't leave the factory that way. But still, it's cooler than my 70 Charger RT.
And I think it's one of the coolest cars we've had in here, and certainly one of the coolest cars we've been able to test drive. So thanks again, Eric, and we'll catch up with you in the next episode.